Hey, what is up YouTube? Kolst here, and the new core set for the Year of the Wolf apparently has been announced, so this is going to change the cards available for all classes that are going to be in for the entire year. For next year of Hearthstone, so that's going to be a big deal for Arena, because the core set's always, or almost always, there was one rotation where it wasn't, but generally it's part of Arena, so we're just going to talk about some of these things here. I'm going to try to jump through. We'll cover all the changes class by class and essentially talk about this, but I'm not going to go like card by card super in depth. I'm just going to kind of give a sense of, try to get an idea which classes are getting better, which classes are getting worse, which classes are going to, again, feel a little bit different. So let's talk about that. This is the blog post with all the announcement. There's not too much want to point out in too much detail. I should mention we're talking about mostly Arena stuff, and there is no mention of Arena in the roadmap or really anywhere here, so we're going to jump past all of that and talk about some of the keyword updates. So there are a couple new evergreen keywords which essentially means they're going to continue to use these, and if you've been watching some of the card reveals, you've already seen some of this, so some of this was already kind of known. But the first one, let me make sure this is actually working. Okay. Is tradable. Tradable is an evergreen keyword now. So you're just going to see tradable cards moving forward. These were going to be rotating out of standard in Unite and Stormwind, but now some of these cards are going back into the core set again. We'll talk more about which exact cards those are, but you can see when we go about the individual cards, but these are, a few of the examples. Another one, which they make an interesting note here, is not becoming an evergreen keyword, but it's going to be a keyword for this year, is magnetic. Magnetic is a keyword where if you played, I don't know when, Boomsday Project, what year was that, like 2016 or something, long time ago. These are mechs that can essentially attach to other mechs. You can see this in Battlegrounds right now as well, so there's an example of like Ziliax. Essentially, instead of playing as a minion, you get to attach it and give it stats and keywords to another minion. So there are going to be a few of those in the core set as well. And the other new keyword, which again they note is going to be an evergreen keyword, is overheal. So overheal is essentially, they go over a long explanation of they kind of felt like they owed Priest having healing actually be good. One of the big problems with healing compared to even armor, which, I don't know, Warriors having issues as well, but, they even point out, it's like, hey, I mean, at least you can armor at full health, but you can't heal, right? Well, they gave this keyword, which they are, again, printing as a full evergreen keyword, so a thing that will be a thing moving forward, overheal. Again, they've already announced some cards with the overheal keyword, but as well, as part of this core set, there are going to be some of these cards that actually have overheal. Mana Geode in particular was really awkward because you couldn't overheal it, but Crimson Clergy, like, this is just a completely new card. This is essentially the replacement for the Cleric, and as well, Benedictus is going to be a thing still as well. So that's all of the overriding things to talk about. So let's go into the actual changes. They released a couple graphics for the core set update. Let me actually move Twitch chat over here. I think it'll look better over here for this part. Twitch chat's here, by the way. No one's saying anything, but hello, Twitch chat. You're supposed to be hi YouTube, so maybe it's because I didn't call you guys out. You guys, we know you're there. We know you're there, guys. But anyway, so they show like the cards that are leaving core and new to core, but also the cards that are being changed as well in this graphic. So we have to go through these a little bit. They don't exactly show what the actual core set is, so we're going to be talking about the actual, changes, and we'll go class by class. We'll just say which classes. Most classes are getting better. I'll just spoil that right now, but we'll talk about each class individually. So with that, let's start out with Demon Hunter. So Demon Hunter is losing Corvus, which I don't know why they even made this card, to be honest. This was never a thing in any mode, I don't think. Maybe it was in duels, I don't know. But like, they're losing that. Sightless Watcher, I like Sightless Watcher. It was kind of like Dredge, except it wasn't Dredge. Well, whatever. And Chaos Nova. Chaos Nova was weird because it was always kind of a bait, to be honest. But people picked it a lot, and it had its moments, right? But it was a little weird. So they're losing that. So overall, Demon Hunter not losing too much, but they are gaining Kain Sun Fury, which, I mean, not really that much of a thing in Arena, but it would have its moments. And they're gaining Immolation Aura, which is kind of just a better Chaos Nova. It's smaller, but wasn't as much damage. It's more efficient. It deals with Divine Shields better. It's usually an improvement. And Illidari's Studies, which is just a very good card. It's a 0 mana Discover. Discover's good. Outcast cards are good. So yeah, it's good cards over there. So overall, Demon Hunter is doing pretty well here. Not huge changes, just not a lot of changes here as far as the cards added and removed. And let's talk about the cards that are being adjusted. And there's a couple of huge ones here. Big one for Arena being Flame Reaper. I mean, Flame Reaper was already essentially 3 Flame Strikes, and for some reason they're buffing this by an attack. So now it's actually 3 buffed Flame Strikes, and it can also just be 15 face damage if you want. Yeah, it's an epic, so you don't see it that much, but if you get offered it, congrats on 12. Other ones coming here. Gnarg Glavesmith is still a card. It is gaining a health stat, so it was overall it's still a little awkward because it can be difficult to outcast, but you know, it's a little bit better because it just has a health. And Wrathscale Naga, I believe it changed also. This thing used to be a 3/1 back in the day, and they buffed it by a health, I think last year, and now they're giving it another health stat. They really want Wrathscale Naga to be a thing. That's going to make it a pretty good card as well. It was already pretty good. And in addition, the last card being buffed is Metamorphosis, which is the same card now, but instead of being 5 mana, or effectively 7 mana to deal 8 damage, which is a little weak, now it's a total of 6 mana to deal 8 damage. So just being a little bit efficient, that's going to make it a little bit better. Still probably, honestly, a little weak in the legendary slot, but, you know, still a useful buff. And I guess these aren't going to be too impactful because most of these are high rarity cards. But so yeah, overall, I mean, Demon Hunter not losing too much, and some of their cards are getting better. They're gaining a bit of things, so you know, a lukewarm like thumbs up for the Demon Hunter changes as far as power level there. So with that, we'll move on to Druid. Druid here. They are losing Fandral, which a lot of people honestly could probably forget that card even existed. Force of Nature, not that much different either, although I had a very nice highlight run, which did I upload on YouTube? I think I did. I had a good highlight run relating to that card the other day. Earthen Scales, at least in Arena, no one's going to be missing this card, and Mounted Raptor, I mean, this was like, I don't know, like an average 3-drop, if that, nowadays. You know, thanks for the reg, Neo Grig. We're talking about the new core set, and so overall Druid really just not losing a whole lot here. What they are gaining here is Kiri, Chosen of Elune, Solar Eclipse, Lunar Eclipse. So the whole Eclipse package. This is an interesting one because these are cards from many years ago as well. And these were kind of honestly a whiff as far as Arena is concerned back when they came out, because simply put, that was the days when you just did not have as many spells. So nowadays these may actually be better than they were because you actually tend to get spells now. There's just going to be a lot more things you can do with these. Solar Eclipse might still be a little risky, but you know, it'll be more likely you can at least do it with something. And Lunar Eclipse is a lot more often going to actually be 0 mana deal 3 instead of 2. So that's going to help a lot. And in addition, they're gaining Witchwood Apple, which was one of the most notoriously terrible cards in Arena. But this is going to be a lot better now because it's being buffed to 1 mana. It was 2, and it used to give you 3 treants. But now we'll talk about the other change associated with this in a second, but now it's only giving you 2 treants in your hand. And they are buffing this, however, because let's talk about the Druid changes here. They show that Witchwood Apple is being changed, but critically with that, treants are only going to be 1 mana 2/2s. Part of why this card was so terrible was because it was a 2 mana card that didn't do anything and it gave you 2 mana 2/2s. It was just awful. But now you know, you can just play it like as a 3-mana double 2/2, which is totally fine. And as well, you know, you can play it on turn 1 and then play double 2/2 on turn 2. So that's just a very good use of your early mana as well. Yeah, it's like a first day of school that you can't low roll exactly. Right. But, well, let me adjust Twitch chat. You are done that, right? I think you guys were off screen slightly. But anyway, other changes coming to Druid. Ancient of Lore is now a 7/7, and it also can restore 7 health instead of just 5. So Ancient of Lore getting a massive buff. That's going to make it a thing. Druid of the Claw being changed to a 6-mana card, which is interesting, but it's also gaining a bunch of stats. So instead of being either a 5/4 or a 5/6, is what it was in its previous or current iteration, now it's going to be a 6-mana, 7/6, or a 4/9. So a bit more polarized between the effects. Essentially, this is just going to be like a mix of kind of like what it's kind of like a mix of what Druid of the Claw is and what Ancient of War used to be, kind of, right? It's just a weird mix, but overall it's just going to be a lot more efficient than it was, so that's going to be, you know, nice for that one as well. And then also Soul of the Forest being buffed to 3 mana. So Soul of the Forest was already kind of okay at 4. It was a little hard to pick at 4, but you know, it had its moments obviously, but now, yeah, it's gaining a lot. So overall, Druid definitely having a very strong change from all of these, because I think compared to like the Demon Hunter ones, these are a lot more impactful. These are a lot of low rarity cards too, so Druid's going to feel significantly different here. Why did they need to buff Flame Reaper? I don't want to know. But yeah. So with that, let's move on to Hunter here. So Hunter, let me zoom out a little bit. So Hunter is losing Houndmaster Shaw, now a card you saw a lot, but it could be very good. Keeps all your minions rushed, no more of that. They're losing Snake Trap, losing Dire Frenzy, losing Cloaked Huntress, and losing Springpaw. Some of these were pretty, you know, somewhat useful cards. Dire Frenzy was more of a bait a lot of the time than anything. But yeah, overall Hunter not losing a whole lot here. They're gaining Dragon Bane, which, you know, usually was never really that good anyway. They didn't buff this either, so I mean, this still won't be that great. But they're gaining Wandering Monster, which is probably you'd consider a better secret than Snake Trap, especially in Deathborn meta. So that's an improvement. They're gaining Catrick, getting Doggy Biscuit, which, you know, would have been rotating out, but it's not going to be anymore. And they're getting a buffed version of Jeweled Macaw. Jeweled Macaw was a 1-mana 1/1 power creep version of, what's it called? The Spider Dude, because it was a Battle Cry instead of a Death Rattle Web Spinner. And now it's a 1-mana 1/2, so it's getting power crept even harder. And with that, talking about the Hunter changes, not too much here because there's the Jeweled Macaw buff noted again, and Savannah Highmane is gaining a random attack stat, but otherwise no changes. So overall, this might be one of the weaker changes. It's still maybe, I mean, I think you might still call this an improvement, but honestly, if it is an improvement, it's very small. Hunter's kind of gonna have no change here, which is possibly good because Hunter probably doesn't need it, so this will be fine. But Jeweled Macaw is a good one. Don't count this too low, and Doggy Biscuit in is going to be nice. But yeah, overall Hunter not really experiencing too much change here compared to some of the other classes. So with that, let's move on to Mage. Mage has some pretty impactful changes here because they are losing some of their discovers. They are losing Ethereal Conjurer, and they are losing their big legendary Caligos. Cards that Ethereal Conjurer had gotten a little bit too slow, even for Arena, to be honest, even though people picked it because they're greedy. But it was a little bit hard to actually play, so not the biggest thing, but, you know, a loss of value for Mage, and as well they're losing Pyromaniac, more value, and they're losing Flame Strike and Kona Cold. So a significant amount of AoE. We'll have to see if they're getting more AoE in the standard, the new standard set. Maybe they will. But yeah, Flame Strike being gone from Arena, that's going to be very interesting. And they're also not getting back some of their iconic cards either, because they are gaining Stargazer Luna in place of Kaligos, which, I don't know, in Arena you would probably prefer Kaligos most of the time, right? Honestly. That might be a downgrade. I don't know, Luna would have her moments, but usually wasn't that great. But you're gaining, instead of Flame Strike, Firelind's Portal. And Firelind's Portal is great and all, but you know, Death Knight has one that also casts Frost Nova. So, honestly, I'm surprised that they're not actually buffing that to 6 mana or something, because that's a downgrade from Flame Strike. They're getting Fire Sail to kind of replace it too, which is nice. They're getting a buffed version of Flame Geyser, and that's a nice pickup because they said that there are going to be some elemental synergies, I do believe. And yeah, Flame Geyser is just 1 mana. It always felt a little bit overpriced at 2, even back in the day. So that thing going to 1 mana is a little bit nice. And they're also getting Arcane Artificer, which was usually not a very good card in Arena, but, you know, you have more spells now. It will potentially serve a purpose in some decks. Although, to be honest, I don't know, you might still just prefer like an Ice Bear. If you really want armor, like just grab an Ice Bear, cut the middleman, right? So, yeah, overall, Mage getting nerfed potentially pretty hard through these changes. You don't want to discount too much, like gaining Fireless Portal, Fire Seal, Flame Geyser, that is some consistency. It's going to help with the fire pack and stuff, so that's good, but yeah, they're losing a lot too. And then, let's see, talking about the changes here, pretty much nothing. Again, the Flame Geyser buff here noted again, and the only other buff on this page is Babbling Book. Babbling Book also going to a 1 mana 1/2 instead of a 1 mana 1/1. There's several of these, which will, a lot of these we'll talk about a little bit more now. So yeah, Mage getting one of the weaker improvements, quote unquote. If it's even an improvement, it might not even be an improvement, but you know, assuming that these are at common rarity, maybe this might still be a benefit over Flame Strike, which you just didn't see as much because it was an epic. But not having Flame Strike in the Discover pool, though, can still hurt Mage. So overall, Mage probably getting a little bit weaker. Which would probably be good because, you know, Mage being the dominant class in Arena for most players for quite a while. So overall, not a bad change. Next up, we talk about Paladin. So Paladin losing Rag the Light Lord, not a huge loss. And they're losing all of their secrets. So that's something that's notable, is that Paladin secrets are just not a thing anymore. Which is important for, you know, ways that you generate random secrets, which we'll be talking about a little bit later. And yeah, those were things that were kind of littering their Discover pool for spells and things. So that is probably overall a pretty big buff for Paladin, even though, I mean, these aren't bad, right? Noble Sack, Reckoning Avenge, they were okay cards, but Paladin will still probably be better just not having them be there. And they are losing Aldor Peacekeeper as well, so that is a big loss. However, they are gaining Lathraxian the Redeemed, which is the 5 mana legendary that gives all of your future dudes Divine Shield, which has synergy with your hero power, but also if you happen to summon a bunch of dudes, like, I don't know, if you just happen to play a Muster for Battle, which they are also getting back. You guys remember this card? But yeah, I mean, at this point, that card's probably not going to be super insane. It's still going to be the best dude summoning card, though, right? So you'll be seeing it and valuing it still pretty high. And they're getting buffed version of Hammer of Wrath. Hammer of the Wrath was honestly never very good because it was overpriced, but now 3 mana deal 3 draw a card. Still probably not that great, to be totally honest, but like it's definitely pickable now, so it's a nice thing to have. It's some nice value. Hand of a Doll, still in its post nerf form, 2 mana 2/1 draw a card. And a huge buff here, which is Grime Street Outfitter. I do believe they are losing Alliance Bannerman. So instead of having Bannerman, buffed Bannerman is a 3 mana 2/2 draw card and have this effect. It's just a 2 mana 2/2 that doesn't actually draw a card, which, you know, seems strong, but it's still probably worse than Bannerman, you'd have to imagine, right? So slightly weaker Bannerman seems, you know, reasonable. Not going to be the craziest thing, but a good card for them to have. And talking about some of the buffs here, again, there's the Hammer Wrath, there's the Outfitter, but a couple of the classic core cards for Paladin also being buffed. True Silver Champion is not being changed to lifesteal, but instead, when your hero attacks, restore 3 health to it. I'm a little surprised they're not buffing it by making it like after it attacks or something, so you don't overheal at full health. Kind of surprised by that, to be honest. But I guess they didn't want to change that part of it. And now Consecration as well, going to 3 mana, so these cards being slightly more impactful. Consecration especially is going to be a lot easier to pick at 3. I feel like True Silver, that's never going to really make a difference. So overall, yeah, Paladin having some good cards. I think the loss of the secrets honestly might just be the best thing for them. But yeah, they're getting some nice cards here. So Paladin did not need the help, but they're getting some help. So yeah, we will talk about that more in coming months for sure. But next up we go on to Priest. Priest having, just by a number of cards, probably Rogue having a lot of changes too, but yeah, Priest having a lot of changes here. So they're losing Murazon, they're losing Lyra, they're losing Chaplain, Focused Will, no one's really going to miss that too much, Power Infusion, one of their big buffs. They didn't have that many buffs to begin with though, so losing a buff, that's going to make Priest feel a little bit different, but they're also losing Radiant Elemental and Northshire Cleric, so ability to draw way more cards than you could ever need going away there. But for all of these losses here, they're gaining Katrina Morte, which I believe just summoned a minion before, right? And now it only summons undeads, which, you know, could be good, but sometimes in Arena it might be a downgrade because you might just not have an undead to even respawn, right? So that might make it a little worse. They did mention, I believe, in the core set blog that undeads will be more of a theme for Priests, so you might have some consistency there. But yeah, that might not necessarily be a good change for that card. But they're also getting Dark Bishop Benedictus into the core set, which was great if you could actually, because this thing had an insanely high win rate in Arena, if you could actually get the hero power, but, you know, it's hard to only have shadow spells. That make it a little bit of a challenge. But then they're having these cards, 3 new overheal cards, returning, which they're returning, but they are functionally different. Mana Geode still kind of the same, except you can overheal it. Crimson Clergy just being a completely new card because it's essentially the replacement for Northshire Cleric. Instead of healing a minion, this thing will draw when you overheal it. So a little bit kind of capped out. You won't be able to do the same amount with it, right? But, you know, you can still get some nice cards out of your 1-drop. Could be useful. Holy Champion, this one just doesn't seem that great to me. Now it's a 2-mana 1/4 instead of a 4-mana 3/5, which it used to be if you healed. I think it was if you healed anything, it would buff its attack by 2, but now you have to overheal it. This just seems like a worse Wicker Claw, basically. That doesn't seem that great to me, but what does seem great is Shadow Ascendant. Shadow Ascendant was already an insane, like a 2-drop, which now it does the exact same thing they used to, but it's a 2-mana 2/3. So that's really good, and they are gaining Shard of the Naru in the core set as well. So overall, I mean, not having Murazon sucks for their Dragon Discover pool, and I mean, some of these cards were nice, but overall, they're not losing that much here, and they are gaining, well, they're getting this new keyword. We're going to have to see, I guess. We don't really know how good Overheal's really going to be in Arena, honestly, but, you know, there's potential there, right? That's what we'll have to see. Honestly, though, the biggest pickup here is the Shadow Ascendant, probably, because that's going to be a huge card for Tempo Priests, for sure. And talking about these cards that are changed, again, here are all the cards we were talking about that were returning to the core set, and then there are some other cards that are being buffed as well. Draconid Operative goes from a 5-mana 5/6 to a 4-mana 4/5 that does the exact same thing it used to. Holy Nova now once again hits face. So now all of the people in Twitch chat that always say you have lethal when you have a Holy Nova in hand are finally going to be right again. That now you will actually have lethal with Holy Novas again. So that will be exciting for Twitch chat. But also Psychic Conjurer here, again turning from a 1-mana 1/1 to a 1-mana 1/2. All of these cards. Swashbuckler's right next, like they seem to like this change, so basically all the 1-mana 1/1s are becoming 1/2s. Just makes them all slightly better so they don't die of ping. Alright, so Yeah, overall, I guess by pure power level, again, we'll have to see how Overheal works out, but Priest not losing too much. Holy Nova hitting face, some of these stat changes are going to be slightly helpful. But, you know, overall, not the biggest, not like huge, clear, big power increases for Priest in this set, I don't think. So with that, we move on to Rogue. So Rogue is losing Vanessa. A lot of people would have forgot that card existed. They're losing Sprint, losing Assassin's Blade, Sinister Strike, Tomb Pillager, Plague Scientist. That's a huge one. I don't know if Pufferfist is leaving or not. But if it's not, then that combo is gone anyway. So that's possibly more impactful than the actual Plague Scientist. And they're losing Cold Blood. So they're losing a lot here. Some of these cards, I mean, no one's going to miss Assassin's Blade or Sinister Strike. These are some good cards that they're actually losing over here. But in return for that, they're gaining a whole secret passage. Or a whole secret package, not secret passage. But Hanar, the big legendary that just gives you the ability to chain a whole bunch of secrets, is back. Important to note that because Paladin secrets are gone, you are no longer going to be able to just chain a whole bunch of Paladin secrets. So that's going to be a thing. Elven Minstrel, for some reason, gaining a health stat. So, you know, this is a 4 mana 3/3 draws card. So a good way to, in Arena, get a bunch of value in Rogue. A lot more efficiently than like a Sprint will, at least tempo-wise. And they're gaining some secrets. So Ambush, Plagiarize, Cheat Death, all coming back. Cheat Death was always pretty hard to use, and that's probably not going to change, frankly. Plagiarize I always thought was really underrated, because it was pretty good if you just held on to it for a while. People would just play it on turn 2 and misuse it, but I always thought Plagiarize was actually kind of good. But Ambush was always one of the best secrets probably made ever, right? So Ambush is a big pickup for them as well. In addition to that, they're getting Eviscerate back to essentially replace Cold Blood and also to replace Wicked Stab, which I believe is rotating out. And Fan of Knives is coming back as a 2 mana card. So you can actually prep Fan of Knives for 0 mana yet again. And important things to note for constructed players, yeah, Shadow Step not leaving because it's not mentioned here at all. Shadow Step is still a thing. They're getting a whole bunch of new Shadow Steps too. Rogue is just going to be Shadow Stepping everything like crazy. It's going to be a thing. But anyway, so the Rogue changes on this list here. Fan of Knives, again, going to 2 mana. Swashbuckler going to a 1 mana 1/2. And that is it for Rogue here. So overall, honestly, like, we'll see. I mean, Ambush is nice, but the Secret Passage... keep saying Secret Passage. Secret Package, usually not the greatest thing for Arena, so that's not necessarily a clear buff. But, you know, Eviscerate and Fan Knives, those are cards that Rogue has honestly been missing, so those are going to be pretty good. With that, we'll move on to Shaman. So Shaman, we haven't talked about neutrals yet, by the way. So Shaman, Kragwa is leaving, Manatide Totem is leaving, Tidal Surge leaving, Rockbear Weapon leaving. None of those are huge losses, but the biggest loss for Arena probably is that Maelstrom Portal leaving. That's a pretty significant loss, because especially with spell damage, that was, you know, that was a nice card to have a lot of the time. I picked Maelstrom Portal over some very good cards and felt good about it. But now in return, Shaman is getting Zap, which is not buffed and was not good when it was originally in Izor, which was always a meme and not a very good one. Overdraft, which, you know, they are trying to force an overload package, so, you know, some of these cards maybe will be slightly better, but I still wouldn't bet on Overdraft being that great. Thing from Below, which could be great, but usually didn't have enough totems in Arena to really make it good anyway. And Ancestral Knowledge, which... So if you just look at these 4 cards, this is actually a very significant downgrade for Shaman. They are losing more than they're gaining here. However, Ancestral Knowledge is a good pickup for them.
So this is being buffed. So it used to overload 2, now it only overloads 1. So now it's kind of like a, you know, arcane intellect. And potentially you can get value of the overloads, so maybe make it slightly better. But and yeah, like you really wanted card draw on Shaman. Shaman really suffered from not having card draw, so that's a good pickup. But still, they're losing a lot with some of these other changes. Let's go over here to talk about these cards that are being changed. Again, there's Ancestral Knowledge. The one's getting adjusted here. Feral Spirit, I believe, is not really getting changed. It's becoming a nature spell, I think, is what the change is on this one. Hex is going to 3 mana, but Hex was already good, and that's not going to make a huge difference, but you know, sometimes that can make a big difference. It was already a card you valued very highly in Arena, so it's just getting a bit better. And Menacing Nimbus is going to a 2 mana 2/3 instead of a 2 mana 2/2. So they do not believe in understated cards anymore, is what we have learned. But yeah, so these are, I mean, marginal increases as well. I guess the Hex and Nimbus changes, those are pretty significant, but otherwise, not great changes for Shaman though. So yeah, I guess because of these increases, they probably gain about as much as they lost. But yeah, I mean, they're getting some, you know, not great cards here. So overall, it'll be okay, I guess, for them. Moving on to Warlock here. Warlock is losing Chat Click. A lot of people probably didn't know that card existed. Also, Jailer would have its moments, but it was understated drop. Didn't usually do that much. Void Terror I'm going to miss, because Void Terror was, I always thought, a very underrated card even before it was buffed, but that one's going away. And then they're losing their 2 drops, Tiny Knight of Evil and Darkshire Librarian. So one thing to note is that they are losing just a lot of curve stuff, and that's going to potentially make Warlock feel a bit less zoo-like, because what they are gaining in return is a bunch of control tools. They're gaining Mal'Ganis, which I'm kind of surprised, because it seems a little hard to make that card work still, unless you can mana cheat it out. Maybe there'll be ways to mana cheat it out, we'll see. They're also gaining Enhanced Dreadlord. Enhanced Dreadlord used to be one of those really good bombs for Warlock, and I guess I should mention, talking about cheating it out, well, they are getting Void Caller in the core set, so that's going to still be a thing. So, you know, there's some potential there, obviously. But as well, they're gaining Spirit Bomb, which is not getting buffed at all, but it's 1 mana, deal 4, but it would cost you 4 health, which is always a pretty high price to pay. But if you want self-damage, then maybe it's okay, or you have a lot of healing. There's always a high price to pay. And the last card they are gaining back is Defile. And I did look at the neutrals, and Spammy Arcanist is not... Wait, is she... Actually, she might be rotating out of... She's core, right? I actually don't know. Which set is Spammy Arcanist in? But anyway. You think Spammy's gone? Okay, that's going to be good. But Spammy will still live on through Defile. So... She's Alterac. Yeah, Alterac's gone. So, okay, Spammy is gone. Thank God. I hate Spammy. But, you know, Spammy will live on through Defile. But one class having Defile is fine. I just don't like when they all do. And other changes here to note is just the one here, which is that Hellfire is being buffed to 3 mana. Hellfire will be sticking around, but it's going to be a 3 mana AoE, which seems, I guess, reasonable at this point. Hellfire was a little bit overpriced, it felt. So that will be okay. That is true though. There aren't gonna be all these 1/1s that are gonna activate Defile anymore. So that's gonna be kind of funny. It's gonna be hard to actually get a 1. But yeah. Because sometimes you would play a 1 mana 1/1 and then actually, you know, do that, but no. You'll have to have like a 2/1, I guess. But with that, let's move on to Warrior. Warrior also getting a whole lot of changes here. They are losing Darius Crowley, losing Gorehowl, losing Fiery War Axe, losing Bloodsail Deckhand, losing Armorsmith, Shield Maiden, Bloodhoof Brave. None of these cards were really great in Arena. Gorehowl could obviously have its moments, but, you know, a lot of these cards you would take them sometimes, but you weren't excited about it. So overall, they're not losing a whole lot here. They're gaining return. They are gaining a buffed version of Armadillo. This gained a health stat, so now it's just now it's just like a pretty decent drop, in addition to buffing all of the taunts in your hand. And surely Taunt Warrior will be a thing this time, chat, surely. But they're also gaining Blade Storm for a potential mass clear if you can set it up, or you can use it like a deadly shot. It was an interesting card. You always had terrible win rate in Arena, but I always felt like it was just because maybe people were playing it badly. But for the same reason that Defile might be harder, this card might actually be better. So that'd be interesting. It should be pretty good, you would think, right? And Dynamatic coming back as well. Sword Eater coming back to, I guess, replace Fiery War Axe. So just a more efficient version of Fire War Axe. Heavy Plate, which was going to be rotating out. I guess that's sticking around. Flight and Funky, interestingly, not getting buffed like all of the other cards. It's kind of funny when they like buff all the other classes versions of things, but it's like, nah, Warrior, nah, yours doesn't get buffed. We know you're having a tough time, Warrior, but nah, you don't get a buff on yours. Get wrecked, Warrior. But anyway, yeah, it's still gonna be a good card for Arena. And the last card here is Woodcutter's Axe, which is being buffed. This used to, I think this is the same card, except that it used to only buff rush minions, and now it just buffs anything. So any random friendly minion. So that'll be a significant pickup there for Warrior, which I guess this is just better than Fire War Axe now, probably, right? So that's a pretty good pickup as well. Overall, the Warrior is gaining a lot because, as I mentioned, they're not really losing that much as far as Arena is concerned, and they're gaining a lot here. So these are pretty huge buffs here. And then I don't believe, other than Armadillo and Woodcutter's Axe, I don't believe any of these are being additionally changed here. So, but still, regardless, a strong set for Warrior. Let me move up here for this now because I'm going to be talking about the stuff on the bottom of the page. So let's go back down to neutral. So these are all of the cards being removed from neutral. I don't know if I'll talk about all of these individually. You can kind of take a look. But the League of Explorers are all gone. Pretty critical that Bran is leaving for Constructed. But, you know, none of these really had much impact in... Other than Bran, none of these really had any impact in either mode, really, frankly. Some cards that are actually significant in Arena, I mean, it's almost more significant that you won't have to be offered, like, Arcane Devourers or things like that, you know? But some of these were, you know, decent cards, but none of these are going to get missed like super hard, right? Faceless Manipulator is not going to be a thing anymore. Scalebane's kind of a loss, honestly. But overall, not too many cards that people are going to miss all that much, frankly. You know, no more Jungle Panther. It's really a tragedy. But yeah, that's one thing, is that like Mossy Horror just not being a thing is a change, but you know, it was an epic, so you just didn't see it that much. But cards that are being added now, let me move myself back over here. Let me bounce all around the screen. Talk about the cards being added here. So Ragnaros is coming back. Also, Shaman is gaining the ability to transform into Ragnaros. I'm kind of surprised they're doing both of those things. So Rags are just going to be everywhere, apparently. Dr. Boom is back. Ziliax is back. Black Knight is back as a 4-mana 4/4 instead of a 6-mana 4/5. That's a hell of a buff. Dirty Rat, and they mentioned the magnetics, so like Ziliax, Menace, Eater of Secrets is replacing SI7 Infiltrator, Neophyte, and overall, like, I don't know. Most of these cards, I guess the exception of like Applebomb, these are all just like better cards than what they're taking out in general, right? Some of these are going to be a little situational, like, you know, Thug and Corsair, you need to have like weapons or ability to attack. But most of these are just an upgrade over kind of what they were taking away. Glacial Shard is going to be a thing. Mermy's a thing. Again, some of the tradables are coming back. So overall, just a lot of... it's an overall increase to the power level of neutrals, definitely. And especially if some of these things are discoverable, you know, having Rag, Dr. Boom, Black Knight, Ziliax, these are going to be major things to the Discover pool as well, potentially. And then any other cards mentioned here? I don't think so, right? So we talked about Black Knight's getting buffed. Menace, but we might as well talk about these. Menace is gaining a health stat, which, you know, might matter sometimes. War Gear is gaining an attack stat for some reason, I guess, just to make it a 5-mana 6/5. Make it a bit more of a curve play. Librarian is actually gaining an attack stat. It's interesting. That card was already really good, right? It's already a power crept Spellbreaker, and now they're making Now it's truly a power crept spellbreaker, I guess. Before it had one less attack, so it wasn't strictly better. But it was already a better card. And Bronze Gatekeeper as well, getting an attack stat to again just make it kind of a curve play in addition to, yeah, just letting it be a thing. So yeah, you can just go like Gatekeeper into Menace, and then you have like a 5/7 spawns a bunch of 1/1s. Pretty good, pretty good. So overall, yeah, and Constructed's going to care a lot more about Dirty Rat being back. Dude, there's going to be just so much disruption in Constructed. It's actually crazy. And it's still funny that Eater of Secrets is replacing Infiltrator, but it's still going to get countered by Objection, which is the big secret you probably would want to counter anyway. So that's going to be very funny. But overall, definitely an increase in the power level of neutral. And as we mentioned again, a pretty big increase too. I guess most classes aren't getting that big of an increase, frankly. A lot of them are kind of close. I mean, the very clear winners, it seems like, I guess you would define Paladin as one of the winners. It seems like Paladin is one of the winners, and I think Warrior is one of the winners, right? Otherwise, nothing really stands out to me. With like Rogue and Priest especially, I feel like it's a little bit too early to tell how good it'll really be. And I guess it's a pretty good increase for Druid too, yeah. More marginal increases though, just because there aren't that many cards. I think it's pretty clear that Warrior and Paladin are the winners here of this. But yeah, and if you like to play Control Warlock especially, it will be a pretty big defining change for Warlock, just because it's going to push a lot further away from the Zoo direction, a lot more into the Control direction. Because I think Warlock's low win rate is partially because people tried to force control and it doesn't really work. And this will help to make Warlock do that a lot better. So that's going to be a big change for Warlock as well. So overall, yeah, a lot of classes that are going to, feel different, right? So I think it'll be a cool change. It'll definitely freshen up Arena, although it's still probably going to be a bigger change, just having all of the new cards in from the new expansion rather than a core set. But overall, I mean, nothing to really complain about these changes either. So I think it'll just be, a nice freshening up for the game. So overall, pretty cool stuff here. So with that, yeah, I guess that is it for this video today. I will move myself back over here. Thanks a lot for hanging out, everyone on YouTube. Thanks a lot for hanging out here on Twitch as well. Let's start playing some actual Hearthstone. But with that, we say goodbye to the YouTube people. So see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.